It is the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be looking back at Sunday's incredible victory over Manchester United on penalties before taking a look at league matters at Brighton this weekend. I am not ready to emotionally process another game of football after Sunday. I feel like all I care about is the beautiful FA Cup, but it's a potential race for Europe at the Amex on Saturday, so we will look ahead to that, and we'll do a load of your emails. I'm joined on the Thursday Club today by Jack Collins. Hello.
Hello, Sammy. Like, you can hear the smile in your voice. It's really nice. Just one of those things, and I think that it's been that way. It's been that way all week, right, for all of us. Every time I go on a show, they're like, "You sound happy," and it's like, "Yes, I do, because I am happy." And the way that it ended up playing out, and all of it, the catharsis of the demons of Old Trafford from a few years ago. Just majestic in every single way.
It was, Yasmin, who's here, and I kind of understand where she's coming from, said, like, I don't know how much I enjoyed Sunday. And I actually kind of understand where you're coming from, Yaz, because I also am not 100% that I enjoyed the game at all.
No.
I don't think I've ever been that stressed. My heart rate has definitely never been that high during a match of football, ever. I genuinely think it might be, apart from maybe like the Villa playoff final, that was tense. That was one of those games as well. It's actually, obviously those games, you crave games that mean so much like that. But also when they actually happen, you realise, God, I couldn't live my life watching football like this every week where it matters this much.
In some ways, I'm really glad I wasn't there. I don't know if I would have been able to cope with a penalty shootout. There's a famous video, and just, slightly off topic, but there's a famous video from years back when Betis played Valencia in the Copa del Rey final, and the video is the fans walking around outside in the Cartuja who can't watch the penalties and have to run back in and I think that's what I would have been like. I think I would have had to walk out the stand. Even watching it, so I was on the way home from Stockholm from a wedding, and I was there watching the game. I was like, this is fine. I'll get it all in the airport as long as it doesn't go past 90 minutes. Now, thankfully, the plane was delayed a little bit. So it got to 120 minutes. And then they were like, please board, last boarding. I was like, right, okay. So I'm on my phone watching it going through the gates. I get onto the plane and the penalties are there. And it's just like, you haven't watched a single Fulham penalty. You watched the United ones. But you keep turning away, and then you got your headphones in and hearing it, and then you come back to the screen to watch the replay ones. And I was like, I can't do it. I was like, the first one, even Raul, who scores every penalty ever, right? Like, the man doesn't miss. I was like, I don't like his run up. Don't like it. Stressed, turned away. And I felt like that for all of them. And yet they were 5 or 4 pretty perfect penalties, right? And look, Andre Onana did us a lot of favours by continuing to dive before the ball was kicked, which Jedi took quite a lot of the mick out of, I think, with the way that he took that penalty. But even then, I was like, I can watch them, because if Bernardo saves something, and as he did, that's a bonus. But if they score, I'm like, oh, well, they scored a penalty. You expect that. Whereas with us, I was like, if we miss, I'm going to implode. So I completely get what you're saying. And, you, Yaz, and I were talking about this beforehand, but I remember the playoff final and remember coming out of it being like, I'm so emotionally drained. I was like, it's not even necessarily joy at that point. Obviously, you're delighted, but it's relief. And it was the same at the end of the Brentford game, even though we weren't there in the playoff final. Just pure, unadulterated relief that I wasn't going to have to deal with it from Brentford fans for the next 20 years. Now, I think all of those things matter, especially given that United have won 2 games against the run of play this season against us. We probably deserve 4 points, maybe 2, but 4 points probably from those 2 games at the least. And you're kind of thinking, please not again, please not again. And suddenly that catharsis of that last penalty being saved, just relief washes over. The plane was taking off, and I was like, they were like, please take your phone away. I was like, no, we're gonna see this out. So I'm glad I got to watch the end of it. But I can completely understand about watching that game. The other thing was, it wasn't a great game of football. I think something that maybe goes under the radar when we're discussing it, because you're talking about it with such relief, but it wasn't a good game of football.
See, now, in what way was it not a good game of football? Because I agree that the quality was quite bad, but it was a game that had a lot of chances, a lot of, it was very open.
Yeah.
Particularly in extra time. I've not seen too many extra times where it was partly Fulham's I mean, some of our defending was actually shocking at points as well. So was theirs. But it's certainly, for a neutral point of view, and I've not spoken to a neutral about this, but it must have been pretty entertaining.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it was an entertaining game of football, but it was sloppy, right, from both sides for long periods. And it was like Fulham in the first half didn't really get going, and then suddenly we score on the brink of half time, and you're like, oh, right, okay, that changes things. And I thought that towards the start of the second half, we were the better side, and then United grew back into the game towards the end of it. I thought that extra time could have gone either way, right? Like they really did open up, and that was a lot of tired legs on the pitch. But I think I'm coming from the point of it wasn't a good game of football in terms of like the quality wasn't there. Like obviously the delivery, the flick, the header for Bassey's goal, brilliant. Bruno's finish, admittedly, excellent. All of those things, you look at and you think, okay, but apart from that, there wasn't loads of moments of quality. And I think the fact that, for me, Sander Berge and Calvin Bassey being Fulham's best players on the day probably speaks to a bit more of an attritional battle rather than something where you see Fulham in their kind of full flow, pomp and circumstance kind of job.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like, so elated we won, and actually the circumstances that we did win it. I mean, the feeling when Leno made that second save was amazing.
Do you think that's the best way to win a football match?
No.
Because I don't either. Right, so we had this. Someone said, I can't remember who it was. It was either on the BBC website or fans writing in. So someone said, it's the best way to win a football match. And I was like, absolutely not. The only best way to win a football match is a last-minute winner.
Okay.
Like last kick of the ball, the referee blows up.
I get the only thing about penalty shootout is it's so definitive, and football rarely has that. Even a last minute winner, unless it is the last second, and that rarely happens. There is still 2 or 3 minutes of they launch it into the box, and you got to deal with a couple of clearances and a couple of shaky moments. Penalty shootouts are so definitive, and I've not experienced a penalty shootout like that before because I wasn't at Everton. Yeah, sure, I've seen Fulham play penalty shootouts, but I've not really, I think, watched one over the years that mattered that much.
No, I think you're right.
And
Spurs.
Yeah, Spurs in the Carabao Cup second round. Like,
that was just fun.
Yeah, that wasn't quite. There wasn't anywhere near the emotion on that. There was on the Everton one, and I remember being in pacing around my living room, but I watched that on telly. But being there in the stadium, that definitive moment when Leno saved it, and about 6 people grabbed me, and you just were like, that was amazing feeling of just like, oh my god, we've actually just won a game of football. There's no reprieve here. There's no like, oh, they might miss it or whatever. It was just like, it was done 100%, it's over. And so I can kind of understand the logic. Honestly, like, if there was a disappointment, but it's not a disappointment because I'm just delighted we won. I'm actually slightly disappointed that Fulham didn't give United a lesson on Sunday, because I think we are capable of. I think we got over the line, and that's an amazing feeling. But I still, to my heart, believe that Fulham, on their day, could give United a clinic. I think we could. We could go and give them a pasting. But equally, I thought that about the home game, in the league, and I was like, and obviously we all know how that turned out. But that was one of those frustrating games where I think that they'd learned that if they opened up against us, it was going to go desperately wrong. Now, extra time's probably a little bit different, but I never felt like that game was there for Fulham, to kind of grab, and it was too scruffy an encounter for one of the two teams to actually take it and be like, we're going to pace the other here. So I think that probably plays into it. I do think that that's a possibility at some point. I don't think it's like weird what you're saying, but I don't think Fulham raised the level to anywhere near that kind of level. This game was not going to be, and you could kind of see that from those attritional first minutes. It was never going to be that kind of game of football, I don't think. We were nervous. We were
really nervy.
Like, even just, there was that moment in the first half where Iwobi just like dribbled the ball out of play like you'd pressed the wrong button on FIFA.
He doesn't do that. One of the things we've talked about with Alex Iwobi is that he doesn't lose the ball. Like, there are moments, he's just such a safe recycler of possession so often. And so that was so out of character, so out of kilter, that it kind of was like, whoa, what just happened? I think you're right, like, especially watching on a screen.
Yeah.
I was like, someone's just pressed the joystick the wrong way.
Yeah, it was weird. But I'm not like here like calling out Iwobi. I think it was indicative of the pressure we felt that we were under in that game. People were making mistakes, people were playing within themselves. And I think you could see that in the celebrations. I think it all got to them. Like, it did. Yeah. And I'm so glad we got through it, and I'm sure that's why the celebrations were as wild as they were, because this really meant something. You could argue that maybe that was Silva's job to maybe try and make it seem like another match of football, but maybe no manager in the world could make, the fact that Tom Kearney tweeted revenge afterwards, like they can try and say, Silva said in the build-up that we're not thinking about the 3-1.
Yeah, you have to be. You have to be. And there has to be a level of that, especially with, the players back at the club and, the Willian back on the pitch and all of those things, right? Yes, obviously Mitrovic wasn't there, but there was a lot of those players who were played that day part of this. And so I think that there is an element of that. I would say this, and I know we'll look forward to the next round when it comes around and all of that, but if Fulham do that again, we'll get knocked out. I think that there is an element about this Palace side who they'll just take advantage of that situation. United are not currently in a state where they can do so. And I think that when you look at that, you go, okay, demons exercised, now play like you mean it. Now take the pressure off, right? And I wonder if part of it is the pressure of looking at this FA Cup and thinking, you know what, there is every chance here. There is every chance. And that's not to say we're going to go and win it. It's not to say we're going to go to the final. It's not to say we're going to get to the semis. But you have to look at that. 8 teams left in the draw. And honestly, Palace at home was about as bad as we could have asked for. But I almost would have rathered City away.
I've got a different opinion on this, but okay.
But I think that there is a level with this whole Palace thing and just the way that they were able to just keep us at arm's length the other day that really scares me. And that's fine. And we can be different. And we know that obviously we've lost to United this season in the league and gone and beaten them now in the cup. So it's not to say everything's the same. And I'm not saying there's loads between Fulham and Palace because I don't think there is. But I do wonder if there is just a kind of, if Fulham had got a City away or a Bournemouth away, is there a kind of something you dial into there? Our away form's been excellent. I think we're third in the Premier League for away form this season. We've showed what we're capable of. I just wary of this. I'm really wary of it.
Can I come back to Palace in a minute? Because I want to jump onto something else that you said about what it meant to the players. I don't think the elation or the nerves was them thinking this is a chance to win a major trophy.
You don't?
I really think it was United, and I think it was Old Trafford, and I think it was. I know there's a few players that played on, quite a few players that played on Sunday that weren't there 2 years ago. And Bassey wasn't there two years ago. Sasha Lukic, he was there, but he wasn't really.
He wasn't really part of the
team. No. There were lots of players that weren't really involved that day.
But there were also these players, and I know it's the cup, and so it's therefore different. There were a lot of those players who were involved that day and involved yesterday, who also played in the 2-1 win in the league over United last season. So, the idea of being terrified of Old Trafford is a bit weird.
Yeah, I guess when you couple it with this season, and I still think there's a hoodoo that exists over United, the fact that they actually made such a game of it against a team that should be technically superior.
We're the last team that they seem to have this over.
Yeah.
Dean and I were talking about this on Ranks this weekend and what it means, and it's on the main podcast, so go and listen if you like.
Yeah.
And we talk about the FA Cup and teams that might win the Premier League. But one of the things he said was he grew up with his dad, a massive Manchester United fan who'd moved to London, and so his dad used to take him up to games, but his mum was from Fulham and a Fulham fan, and so he was kind of split loyalties. But to begin with, that didn't really matter because Fulham were on the verge of going out of existence, and United were, winning everything in the Premier League. And he was like, as Fulham started to move through the leagues, I just got to about the age where I started to go to games on my own. And he was like, I made the decision, Dean played for Fulham as well, but he made the decision to kind of be part of that and part of what Fulham were about through those years. And there's a famous quote, and obviously there are lots of things, but it was the whole Manchester United of the South, right?
Yeah.
From Mohamed Al Fayed. And whilst there are plenty of things about that we don't want to condone, that quote's interesting because Dean said for the first time in his lifetime, he thinks that Fulham are a better team than Manchester United in pretty much every aspect. And he was like, that is wild to me, who grew up in that era where United were kings of the world and Fulham were basically on the verge of going out of existence, and half of my family is United and half of them is Fulham. The idea that Fulham might ever be better than Manchester United, and just fundamentally better, was kind of anathema. And he was like, at that point, when the final penalty was saved, he was like, I know it shouldn't come to that. He's like, Fulham are better in the league, they're higher up the league table. He's like, but United have had the hoodoo over us. He was like, the moment that went out, he was like, it's done, it's over. Fulham are actually 100% right now a better team than Manchester United. He's like, I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. And it's kind of wild how quickly things can change.
Yeah. I don't know why that the Iwobi last minute winner last year didn't cure it as much as I thought it had. I kind of was, when we went up to Old Trafford first day of the season, I remember thinking, we won here last year, here we turn up. And then it felt like, oh, wait, no, the hoodoo's back. And then again, it happened in January and you're like, oh, wow, we still do have some sort of demon against them.
Do you know what's weird about this? Like, and I might be wrong on this, and maybe the answer is actually someone else, but of that kind of first big long spell in the Premier League, the 13 years, United are the team, not Old Trafford, admittedly. United are the team I kind of remember Fulham getting the better of most. There was some big results against Manchester United. We had some big wins. We had obviously the one where Rooney was sent off, and there were some amazing moments.
Even moments like Diop's last-minute equaliser. Yeah, I agree that.
Like they felt like you look at like our record against Chelsea, for example, or all of those things. Arsenal. Like our record against United. Maybe this is wrong. This is literally going off kind of what I remember, and I was obviously growing up at the time, so it's kind of comes up. But I do think, like in my head, United were probably the team that we had the most joy against of the biggest clubs that first spell in the Premier League. And I don't know where the hoodoo comes from.
No, I think that to the players that are there, it was about 2 years ago, and maybe the fact that they won in the league didn't make up for what happened in the cup. They basically lost the opportunity that day, not just to get to Wembley for a semi-final, but potentially a final, because it was Brighton in the semis, and we knew it was Brighton in the semis. Yeah. And that was a Brighton team that were good, but also like playable. We'd beaten them twice already that season. Mm-hmm. So potentially we lost an FA Cup final that day. I mean, you could argue that it was City on their treble. Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't have won the FA Cup final. That's not really the point.
So I think it was about the fact that it was a mixture of the FA Cup. Yes, of course, they'll have seen who the teams are left in it and that it's winnable. But I think, you say about the Palace game, and
yeah,
I don't, as much as I'm not necessarily here saying I think we'll beat Crystal Palace, I think it's the biggest 50-50 game of the round.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that there's other ones I'm like, I can see a favourite there. I can't see any favourite between Fulham and Crystal Palace. I think it's the most even. Either team could win this game. Fine.
It's also one of those weird ones where, like, obviously we care loads, but from like a narrative perspective, like outside of it, if you're a neutral and you're looking at what teams you want to be in the semi-finals, you're hoping that the Bournemouth beat Man City.
Yeah.
You're hoping that, whatever. I think you're looking at the Fulham Palace and be like, yeah, either, man. Like, yeah. I think the neutrals will be like, I don't mind which of these teams goes through. That's a great day for both of them. Yeah. And I think that that's a weird place to be for us.
Also, I think that this tie was weirdly, the Man United Fulham felt like the tie of the round. It was picked for the 4:30 slot. It felt like it had the most interest. I think the BBC went straight for it as their first pick. And Fulham Palace is going to be the fourth. Yeah. I think it's the least interesting tie of the quarterfinal from a neutral perspective. The pressure's off. And it felt massive on Sunday. And so there felt like extra pressure, and it came out with the players, and, we'll come on to what impact that might have against Brighton. Hopefully none, but it would have taken an awful lot out of them. I just wondered what you thought of the all of the celebrations and everything like that, like the dressing romantics.
Great.
It was a bit of there was a few people online being like, oh my God, they've just beaten, how much they care beating United. But I mean, I hate the celebration police anyway.
You should be able to enjoy winning football games. I think there's a level of it in terms of, especially if you're going like for a title, or whatever, and actually Fulham had a bit of this, with the derby celebrations, right? After the playoff final, semi-final, second leg. And whilst all the fans were absolutely elated, the whole message coming out of the dressing room was, we've still got a game to win. We've got to go and win. Job isn't done.
Yeah.
And I think that that's maybe the case in terms of certain elements of this. But generally, I just like enjoy celebrations, as much as you want. Like, I do think that sometimes when teams get overexcited early on about being a team and then they crumble in a title race or something like that, then you can be like, maybe just focus a bit more, But taken away from the fans in particular, I'm like, you should just enjoy yourselves as much as you want. And I think the players, I used the word catharsis about 4 times today, but that is very much what I feel about this. Like, that is the kind of demons laid to rest. Revenge best served cold, best served cold, as I put in my 3-word review. But it did feel like a lot of that. And also, like, there's a bit of like, not cockiness, cheekiness, like that kind of like arrogance you want from footballers in some of the things that have come out since. The revenge from Tom Kearney I liked. Right, the one I really liked was Calvin Bassey, like calling out Alan Shearer for not making him man of the match. I'm like, wow, that's you're really at it. Like you've really got your thing, and that feels good, right? That feels good to have that kind of like, here we go, this is what we are about. And I drew a comparison recently on a show I was on between. They were like, what was the best Fulham team ever? Who's the best Fulham manager ever? And I was like, well, my lifetime, it's probably the Europa League team, under Roy Hodgson. And he was like, well, what made that so special? I was like, well, there's a lot of players in there who'd kind of been written off at other clubs, who people said they were finished and were brought back into a rejuvenated, really well-drilled Fulham. And I kind of stopped myself in my tracks. I was like, oh, wow, that's what's going on again. That's what's going on again. And I think that's probably Fulham at our best, right? What do Fulham do best? Well, take players that are underappreciated at other clubs who might not be quite good enough for, teams challenging for titles or Europe or whatever, and build them into part of a more cohesive whole. And I think this team feels like that cohesive whole. And, we're talking about managers, and I said, well, Marcus Silva's probably second now in the kind of Fulham manager list in my lifetime. What takes him further? Well, he wins a trophy, right? That's suddenly you go top. Yeah. You trump even the European journey. You trump even Sir Roy if you go and win a trophy for Fulham. And if we'll talk about it in part 2 with the Brighton game as well. But the steps towards that, the steps towards Europe potentially in the league, the steps towards getting to major finals. All of this feels like it's on an upward trajectory. And look, I'm aware that we are a size of club where things can come crashing down. And we've seen that with a lot of clubs. And so I'm not sitting here saying in 5 years' time, Fulham are going to be in the Champions League and, winning Carabao Cups on a regular basis. But I feel like the trajectory at the moment feels like it's on a really good path. And that's something really exciting. Yes, we get frustrated. And yes, like the frustration after the Crystal Palace game in particular really swept me away. I was like so frustrated because we know how good this team can be.
Yeah.
But I think when you do, weekends like this make you take a step back and be like, wow, what we're putting together this season is very, very special. And these moments, United on penalties, Chelsea on Boxing Day, Brentford with the last 2 late winners.
The Holy Trinity.
Well, I hope not. I hope there's a fourth coming. And it's an FA Cup final winner. But, these are moments that elevate a season. And for so long, it's felt like this season has been, look at the amazing moments, but what if? Well, a lot of those what ifs are starting to come to a point where you're like, oh, what if? Rather than, oh, what if?
Yeah. Only thing on the Calvin Bassey saying why wasn't I man of the match? And I do agree that Bruno Fernandes shouldn't have been man of the match. Is it bad to say that I think Sander Berge probably deserved to be man of the match over Calvin Bassey?
I think you could probably make a case for both of them. Like, Bassey was excellent.
Oh, yeah, Bassey was good.
Bassey was excellent and scored a goal. Berge was excellent, right? Like, so if you were going to give it purely on, and I know that it doesn't work like this, but like if you're giving it purely on performance, yeah, I think you give it to Sander Berge. But like goals matter and they also change games. And so that's the reason. And also, I don't know if you saw Alan Shearer's kind of walk back on this.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting, and basically saying, yeah, I had to give it before the penalties. And if United had won the penalty shootout, people would be like, yeah, fair enough. He's the person that dragged them back into the game and then they won. And I was like, yeah, that's probably it.
Didn't really get that logic though. I thought maybe if he had said it like, oh, I had to.
Why does he have to give it before the penalties? Why can't I give it afterwards?
No, I do know that they always do that, don't they? They always end the match with who's your man of the match. And I guess maybe I don't know, but it didn't really matter. Like what was he trying to preempt that United were going to win on penalties? And it was weird that if he gave it to a Fulham player, but United won on penalties. I didn't really see that. Like, use your eyes. Who's the best player on the pitch? Bruno Fernandes was not that great other than the goal. Like, it was a brilliant finish.
No, he wasn't, but he also was the only reason United dragged themselves back into the game.
Yeah, from a moment of brilliance. But
No. I mean, I think he lifted it.
I mean, it didn't help that for
minutes.
large swathes of the game, he was their only centre midfielder. Like it felt like, from the tactics. Now, the only thing on Bassey that I think that made me pick Berge over him was that I think Obi gave him a real torrid time, and there was also in this game, and if it turned out differently, I think we'd have been chastising it, but there were some real defensive moments of absolute concern from Fulham on Sunday.
Agree.
I think we got away with about 3 where it was just a ball over the top. The one where Leno has to do the outrageous save is just complete miscommunication between the three defenders.
No, I agree.
And none of them took charge.
I think that this Obi thing has been slightly overplayed. By the way, I didn't think he was that good.
Oh, I don't know.
I went and watched back the day after, because I was like, I haven't watched this properly on a proper screen. So I watched the game back, and then afterwards I was like, there's a thing you can do on Wisecout where you basically watch a player's individual actions. He loses the ball about 6 times. Like he gets in behind once and puts together a really good shot, but he loses the ball about 6 times. Like his touches aren't particularly good. I think the way he put himself about and they gave him a presence up top is to be admired. And I'm not trying to criticize him. He's a young lad trying to make his way, right? Like, but I think like out of it, we got all these headlines being like, could Obi be the future of Man United? Why isn't he in the Europa League squad? I was like, my dude, he lost the ball. Like he maybe touched the ball twice and kept it.
He looked, he as you say, he brought a presence. He looked dangerous. It was a classic raw player, wasn't it? I mean, anyways, so it's a United issue.
I know. Can we just quickly talk about the fact that Sess came on the right? Because I think if you go back to the first podcast of this season, or when we signed Ryan Sessegnon,
you didn't do I told you so.
I am going to do a hate today. I told you so. I said on that podcast, I think that because Marco Silva likes inverted wingers, we might well see Ryan Sessegnon play on the right-hand side of a front three if he plays in a front three. And you know what? I liked it. I liked it
a lot, and I think like we'll maybe come on. I mean, I think Sess is going to be a big part of the Brighton chat, given our lack of wingers. I do think it was purely circumstance. I mean, we were there in the stands, kind of working out what Marco would do in terms of his substitution. There was very little options that Marco really had at his disposal in any case. But yeah, I thought he looked good. I mean, I
think he'd look better with Tete on outside him.
Yeah, I mean, my soul would have left my body and flown into heaven had he scored.
I know. We'll save that for Chelsea at home or Brentford away.
My heart stopped beating when he went through, and I thought I just thought he'd done it.
It was a great snapshot as well. It's a really good save.
Yeah. I mean, he did everything right. It was actually a moment at the very, very. I think I wanted
where his touch lets away from him. Yeah,
120th minute, and I was and there's a few people around me almost getting annoyed with him just because I think everyone thought that was the moment. Look, it was a sensational day. Fulham in the quarterfinals. We'll obviously preview that Palace game a lot more closer
when it comes around
to the time, the kickoff time and the ticketing for it not being announced.
Yeah, which is really frustrating people. You know, I'm part of this Fulham Fans Island group, and my friend Pierce wants to come over for it, and he's basically there like, can you release it? I want to book my flights. So people are not happy.
Yeah, I guess all I can say at this point is that I hope beyond hope, and normally when I hope for this kind of thing, it doesn't happen. I just really, really think that Fulham should not look at this as an opportunity to profit and just look at this as an opportunity to fill the ground.
Do Leopards change their spots?
Yeah, I like the atmosphere against Liverpool that we created last January was brilliant, and I think contributed to us almost producing a gargantuan effort to push Liverpool all the way that night.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can do the same, and I was glad it was at home. I know that like our away form's better. And yes, okay, we haven't beaten Palace at the Craven Cottage for 20 years, but I was just glad to get back home. Fulham can perform at home. It's not like we are Crystal Palace, who do seem to have some sort of problem at Selhurst Park.
It would have been great to have at Selhurst, actually, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I was just happy. I just want it at home. Like, we've been on the road for a couple of rounds in this FA Cup, and we were on the road last time we were in the quarterfinal as well. I'm just happy to have it at Craven Cottage. If you offered any Fulham fan, right, you're going to have a game at Craven Cottage against a fellow mid-table side for a chance to get to Wembley.
Yeah.
Snap your hand
Would have been
off.
good to go to Deepdale, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that. And as you say, you were the one saying, I didn't want Palace. Like, I was very happy with Palace.
Fine. Yeah, I mean, look, we'll see.
I think it's they are the second weakest team left in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Would have I wanted Bournemouth? No. Villa? No. City? I know that they're beatable, but ideally not, particularly at.
I think everyone else is about the same, but I think Palace you probably put into that group as well.
Yeah,
I think there's not much really between Fulham, Palace. I'd even put Forest into this category. I think they've dropped off a fair bit at this point. I'd have Fulham, Palace, Villa, Brighton, Forest.
Yeah.
And Newcastle.
I think
Sorry.
I think there's 6 teams that effectively are all the same. You're completely right. I think have an equal chance of winning this.
And then the City slightly above them, and Preston. I mean, look, it would be amazing, but
yeah, and Villa probably with the signings of Asensio and Rashford, maybe they will come good. But then again, I think you have to caveat
be in
with
the next
Villa.
round of the Champions League.
Yeah, they're probably going to be in the next round of the Champions League, and they have been struggling with like depth. So we've got an equal chance of winning it, which is incredible. Right, we will take a break there. Afterwards, we'll look ahead to Brighton on Saturday. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. Sammy here with Jack Collins. We have sold loads of tickets for our Fulhamish live show at the Half Moon Putney, which is going to be taking place straight after the Tottenham Hotspur game. So only about 10 days until that. All your Fulhamish regulars, you're part of it.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back after missing the last one.
Yeah.
I was away the last time.
I was going to say, you were away, you weren't dropped.
No, I wasn't dropped. No. I was on loan, like Porto or somewhere, Porto-ish. But it was I'm really glad. I'm really excited to be back at the Half Moon and back doing a live show. It's one of my favourite things. Yeah,
Paul Cooper is going to be our special guest for this one, aka Martin Mucklow of This Country fame. I heard some rumours swirling around that Charlie's going to lurk about, but that's TBC. Probably I've said too much. But anyway, tickets are available via the description in this podcast or on YouTube. Pick them up. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be getting going just about an hour after the final whistle, and there will be the Carabao Cup final on in the pub as well, because I know that some people probably want to have half an eye on that. So the show should be over, we think, by the time at least the second half kicks off.
Nice.
And it's on in the pub as well. So come down. We'd love to see you there. And we're going to be doing a big special, This Will Catch On. I know we haven't done This Will Catch On for a while. And
this is why. They've all been saved up.
It's becoming a bit of a thing that we just love saving it for the live shows, because it's so much fun in the live show environment.
It is.
So we are saving. But Yasmin was telling me earlier, she's been looking at the This Will Catch On entries. Her own words were, there's 1 or 2 spaces left for a banger.
Okay. All right. Get them in.
So email them, hello@fulhamish.co.uk. If you've got the This Will Catch On and you want it to have the live show treatment, which is the best treatment it can receive, by the way. If you've got a burning chance, I mean, there's plenty of new players that haven't got a chance yet. So send them in, hello@fulhamish.co.uk. We'd love to have them. And yeah, please do come down to the live show. It's looking like a lot of fun, and there aren't too many tickets left. Brighton on Saturday then, Jack, at the Amex. Our record against Brighton is absolutely bizarre. Obviously, they now see us as the ultimate bogey team.
Yes. It's rare that we have this hold over someone, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's now 9 Premier League games in a row that we've avoided defeat against them. But our record before that
was dreadful
so
in the
bad.
Championship.
We had 5 defeats in a row against them.
There was I think the last time we lost to them, actually, 2017.
Yeah, and it was at the Cottage. And
we were at the Cottage, and we went 1-0 up. Lucas Piazon scored.
Yeah, a banger.
And then they scored 2 goals in 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Duncan Tomer Hemed, maybe. That was bad vibes. I remember that being particularly poor vibes. But they were really good that season. And yeah, I mean, look, since we've come up, it's just one that seems to stick. And even in our darkest moments, we've been able to find light at the end of the tunnel against Brighton. So naturally, a really good moment in Fulham's history. We're probably going to lose.
Well, I mean, all runs have to come to an end at some point. I do put it down to some sort of I just think it's a bit of a weird set of coincidences, really. Like, games have just slightly gone against them. There have been so many times where, actually, we've been it's also, I guess,
they've been the better team quite a lot, and we've just ended up winning. You know, obviously the Man of Solomon goal that was exceptional and so much fun. And
well, I never forget last season at the Amex as well. They absolutely dominated us in the first 45 minutes. Should have been 2, 3, 4 goals up, and then João Palhinha scored the equaliser for us in the driving rain. And I think there's been quite a few moments where, and actually, our record at the Amex isn't amazing.
I was going to say, there was also that game really early on. It was probably our first season back up, right? It was it 2-2 where we were 2-0 up.
Yeah. Drew 2-2.
The red cards and all of the drama with that actually derailed us after, a little bit of a
Yeah, it was one of those sliding doors moments.
Yeah, it really
that,
felt like a big,
game.
big moment that, and I think that set us on our way to relegation. So whilst our record is unbeaten, there are some darker moments in that as well. I remember being so frustrated at the end of that game. I watched that in the Serbia Fulham fans pub,
Oh, right.
which I'm not sure exists anymore, but there was like a pub in Belgrade that just had like Fulham signs all over it, and I went there to watch that game. So there you are.
This season, Brighton obviously are now on a terrific run of form. They've been so streaky this season, I think is the key thing to say. They're on this run of 5 wins in a row. I mean, 2 of them were against Chelsea. They obviously smashed Southampton. But then the last 2 results for me are the ones where I'm like, okay, this does look like a Brighton team on form. A 2-1 win over Bournemouth at home last weekend. Bournemouth were in that match and Brighton had to really work for that victory.
Yeah, they had to dig it out.
And similarly, I guess, with the Newcastle game, like they had to dig that one out as well.
What a strange game of football.
Yes.
Like, I don't really have anything to add apart from what a weird game of football. Like,
I mean, Danny Welbeck got the winner in both.
that guy Welbs.
He thanked his good genes for the fact that he's still the way that they're talking.
What a guy, man!
The way that they're talking about him as if he's like 46. He's 34. He's like a year older than me. Can we stop talking? Can we stop putting him
He's finished, mate. Have you got good genes?
Well,
Clearly not.
I'm playing football at 6 p.m. tonight, and you can judge for yourself.
We'll see. Yeah.
But yeah, we do need to stop talking about him like he's about to get his pension, please. I feel like this might be a common theme with me over the next few years.
Yeah, I can see. As you become older than, like, I'm doing this with my co-host on Serious at the moment. He's like, there's like 2 players in the Premier League now who are older than me. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, that is tough. Fabian Hurzeler, interestingly, is 1 day older than me.
Oh, yes, of course.
So that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's your day is coming too, Jack, but my day just seems to be coming right now in terms of feeling just older and older. But anyway, it is incredibly weird. But obviously, before this run of wins was their 7-0 thrashing by Nottingham Forest. The weird, we're going to try and play Jack Hinchelwood and no one else in midfield.
Poor old Jack Hinchelwood. He was like Jon Snow against the cavalry that day. One man with like an army of horses running at him. There was no respite for that poor boy. But I do like Jack Hinchelwood. I think he's really good.
Yes, he is. How do you see this one going? I mean, it's really difficult. I think if Brighton hadn't had their own kind of late dramatic game against Newcastle, I'd be going into this thinking, oh dear, this is definitely going to be a case of after the Lord Mayor's show, because if you'd had a Brighton team that didn't play on the weekend, who were well up for it, I'd be like, I don't give Fulham a chance. But I think they're in the same boat as us here.
Yeah, I mean, look...
It was a big win for them. That was a massive win.
Yeah, huge. And then they've got their own opportunity, right? To go and one, get revenge on Nottingham Forest for that 7-0 that we just talked about, but also, to get themselves back into a semi-final. They have been there in recent years, which is a bit weird. I was at that game. I was covering the FA Cup at the time. They've got their own opportunity to get there. But I think you actually look at this Brighton team, right? And what we've seen in recent weeks is a kind of settled system. It's finally gone back. They're putting 2 in midfield again, which is useful for whoever's playing there alongside Jack Hinchelwood. Balaba's back, which is a big step forward. Diego Gomez has come in from Inter Miami and started to showcase what he's all about as well. I think the Ruter, Joao Pedro combination they've got going on in the 9 and 10 fits really well. Those two have started to link up really nicely. I really like Joao Pedro, so that makes 2 of us.
Did you see the guy that names his Wi-Fi network Jorginho Ruter?
No, very good. Very, very good. It's just exceptional. Another very talented player to come out of Leeds, right? I can't believe we've just said that.
I didn't name my Wi-Fi that.
Okay.
I named mine Sasha Rutic.
I'll have to leave in a minute. Oh God! It might be time to go home.
That was quick.
That was very good. Well done. It was excellent. Very, very good. I'm just sad I couldn't come up with one myself. Really. Is actually what I'm getting with this. But look, the wingers Mitoma and Minte have been very, very good in recent weeks. They obviously have options in those areas. Solly March is back just in time for his day. Yeah, so that's good.
Yes.
Solly March day. Solly March day on Friday.
Why is it Solly March Day?
It's what it says. It's March 7, right? And he wears March 7. So Solly March Day is on Friday. I was
like, surely he gets the whole month.
No. He just he gets his own special day.
Oh, thank God we're not playing on that day.
Yeah, that would have been dreadful. Berge and Gruder's come in this summer, and he's taken a little while to get going, but I really like him. I thought he was excellent in the extra time against Newcastle. But yeah, I think like the depth there now in that midfield. Mats Fifa's back as well. Welbeck coming off the bench and making a difference feels important. They've still got a Dingra to rotate out with the wingers. It feels like Brighton's depth, which was missing like 4 weeks ago, and as we saw in that Forest game, yes, they made tactical mistakes, but also there weren't many options available to them. Suddenly it's like, whoa, everyone's back. And I think that matters to Brighton because the rotations you've seen in the middle, in the midfield in particular, are good, and there's a lot of quality coming through in those areas. You know, if they swapped out Baleba and Hinchelwood for Diego Gomez and Gruder tomorrow, you'd be like, yep, fair enough. Or Mats FIFA, you'd be like, fair enough. And I think that's where they've got probably a slight advantage on us right now, in that they will be able to rotate for this game if they're feeling a little bit after the Lord Mayor show. Whereas I feel like Fulham are probably going to struggle a little bit to do that, especially with Sasa banned. Yeah.
Well, one player that is suspended for Brighton is Tariq Lamptey. He obviously got the second yellow against Newcastle. Saw some debate of like, I feel like everyone's getting very confused by the suspension rules. If it's a red, it's the next game. It's really quite simple to work out.
Yeah, but I think people were confused because if it's 2 yellows.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. If it's a red card, it's the next game. It's only because the Premier League has its own yellow card rule that's why Sasha could play against United, but now he's going to miss Brighton and Spurs. Yeah, we've obviously got quite a few issues here. Now, I think
who do you think comes in there?
It's Harrison Reed.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my choice as well.
But I think the fact he also came on for Sasha Lukic in the game against United, and whilst he didn't change the world with his performance...
No, he was fine. He always is.
Yeah, like, I think that means that Harrison Reed is just surely, like, who else would you play? If it was Sander Berge, I think it's a bit of a different issue. I don't necessarily think that, like... Harrison Reed is a direct Sander Berge replacement, but I do think in terms of, like, you got Sander there to kind of hold everything together. Harrison Reed is probably allowed to play his game, which is box to box. It's running around.
I agree, and I think it should be Harrison Reed, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he goes Andreas. For the exact reason that you're saying. Because if it was Sander out, I think that maybe you want... I actually disagree. I think you maybe want Sasha and Harrison to kind of cover the ground. Whereas I think the player that, you know, if you're looking for your other midfielder to be able to, you know, Sasha's been brilliant in terms of like rotating the strike and moving the ball around the pitch, recycling possession. Like, I suppose from that kind of perspective, on ball, is that where you want an Andreas potentially?
I just think we need. I
would prefer it was Harrison because I think we're going to need the legs in there against this Brighton team. But it wouldn't surprise me if Marco wants to go out and make a statement that Andreas goes in there to be the kind of ball playing centre midfielder.
Well, look, I think that's the only thing for me. I mean, I'm fully now just wedded to the idea that Andreas and Emil Smith-Rowe should not play in the same team. We should not go back to the whole Andreas playing 8. I have liked Andreas at 10. I think he did well on Sunday in the 10. I think that's his position.
And I would keep him there. I wouldn't bring in Smith-Rowe for this game either.
Yeah, but we have obviously got problems now on the wing.
Precisely.
You've got Noah Dharma. So obviously there's no Wilson. So basically your right side is messed up. You've obviously got Iwobi, Willian, and Sessegnon. Unless I'm forgetting someone.
Unless he goes to a 5 again.
Well, this is something he could do.
I actually think he might here. Like, considering how well it worked at Wolves, considering that we saw the wing-backs flying forward, and considering it means that you don't have to be quite as tight with who's there. Now, obviously, I think that works slightly less well when you don't have a Dharma to run off, you know, off the front man.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he goes with something similar to that in this setup, and it goes into like a 3 at the back with Anderson, Diop, and Bassey. Look, Cuenca was excellent in that game. We should give him some credit.
Yeah, but if you've got the option...
But I think it's there. I think then you go Robinson on the left, you go Castagna on the right. That's 5. I think you might go 5-3-2, and then you go in the middle, Sander, Harrison, Andreas, and you go up top with Iwobi and Raul or something like that. Maybe Iwobi and Muniz because it gives you a bit more ability to stretch over the top.
Yeah, I could see. I as you say, I could see him doing that because I think the only other option is to play
Sess on the right.
Oh well, I was going to say Sess on the left and Iwobi on the right.
Yeah, could do that too.
But I do think that like Marco Silva, likes having Iwobi on the left. He has said in press conferences, I've seen Jack Kelly tweet this, that he thinks that Iwobi is better on the left wing than the right wing.
I do too.
Well, yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Iwobi's best position is left. And I'm very happy. I do think, for me, Sessignon deserves a run. I think that he is proving game on game his usefulness.
He's getting
to his
back
team.
to it, isn't it? Like I think there is such a noticeable difference between where he is right now and the way he's playing, as opposed to what we saw from him at the start of the season when he made cameos. And I think that step forward, and look, both Marco and Ryan have spoken about his fitness and like is kind of just getting game minutes into the legs and getting back to that level. And Sess spoke about, you know, Marco protecting him a little bit after the Wolves game and saying, look, you know, this crowd obviously is desperate to see you, but they don't want to see you if you can't do it and you're not up to it. And he was like, and I wasn't up to it at that point, but you know, now it's about getting those minutes in and seeing where we can get to. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Sess start here.
Yeah, or even like if you did go 5-3-2, could you go? Oh no, because then that means Iwobi's. I don't know. If 5-3-2, I think there isn't space for Sess. I think there's more space for Sess if he stays 4 at the back.
Yeah, I'd agree.
If it's 5, I don't understand no way you put.
I don't think
Sessignon.
Sess starts if it's a 5. Like, I think if you start Sess in a 5, it has to be a left wing back, where he obviously was excellent against Wolves, but you're not dropping Jedi at this point. So, like, unless he needs a rest, I suppose is the only question. But I don't think he'll need a rest.
Not with a week between.
No.
Games.
I agree. But like
I think he gave Robinson the rest he needed against Wolves, and that was fantastic. Robinson was brilliant on Sunday, and I think it was great for Robinson to get that break.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it is 4 at the back to see Sess on the right.
I mean, that would be fun.
I think there's something there. I think there's something in it.
So yeah, well, if you're going down to Brighton on Saturday, enjoy. If you want my advice, take the Lewis route. That's all I'll say. I am the biggest Lewis advocate ever in terms of
Big Ferrari fan.
Absolutely no. Trying to get me in trouble there. Right, let's do some emails before we finish. This one from Tim Lundy. Feels like a little bit of a rant / message, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. Hi, Fulhamish. I'm sick of fans saying that finishing mid-table and outside the European places means Fulham are stagnating or treading water. It's complete and utter nonsense, and here's why. Off the pitch, for a club of Fulham's relatively small stature in terms of profile and fan base, every single season in the Premier League helps grow the club. Even if we finished 15th for 3 seasons, the exposure we get being in the Premier League would have an impact, and this should never be underestimated or underappreciated. Remember, we previously spent the best part of a decade in the yo-yo wilderness. Just being in the Premier League puts us on TV across the world and means we are regularly involved in high-profile matches. On the pitch, overall, so far, this is the best season Fulham have had since the Europa League season. We are undeniably stronger and playing better than we did over the previous 2 seasons. We have developed a reputation with other fans of being a strong Premier League outfit who are genuinely capable of getting results in almost every single fixture. When was the last time anyone thought of Fulham like that? Kids playing the latest edition of FIFA will have a strong Fulham team as an option. Things like that shouldn't be sniffed at in terms of raising our club profile and demonstrating how much more of a force we have become. So given all of this, any Fulham fan who moans about the club not progressing or achieving enough should take a long, hard look at themselves. We haven't even completed our 3rd season back in the Premier League yet, and people are judging Europe as the benchmark. It's preposterous. If we finish 10th for the next 3 seasons, I'd be bloody overjoyed, and the club would inherently grow over that period. Sorry for the rant from Tim.
I think Tim's completely right on quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
But do you know who wouldn't be here in 3 years if Fulham finished 10th for 3 years in a row? Marco Silva.
Yeah.
Because there is ambition to take Fulham into that European, I know we've been told off for saying conversation, picture, a couple of times. And I do think that there is that's where we're at with it. It's not necessarily, like, what Tim is saying there is completely correct. Staying within the confines of the Premier League, being a very good Premier League outfit who teams respect and you look at, is great for Fulham's profile in terms of attracting players, growing the fan base worldwide, all of those things. And I completely agree. But I think that if you don't show ambition to grow and ambition to try and move on to the next phase, you will lose what is a very, very ambitious manager with designs on getting to higher points in the game year on year. Now, if Fulham can provide that, then Marco Silva will stay.
But let's say Fulham won the FA Cup or finished fifth.
Fine, but that's not what Tim's saying. What
No,
Tim's saying is we
but
could just stay there.
You'd
in the
also
wind.
lose Marcus Silva that way too, by having too much ambition, finishing too high, getting too close to the sun, because then suddenly massive clubs will go like, wow, that guy's done a bloody good job.
I look at this and I really do. I've been thinking about it a lot, right? And I have come to the conclusion that I don't know who's going to come in for Marcus Silva. Now, that's not to say that if he wants to stay in the Premier League, because I don't really know where the job's going to come up. You're looking for somewhere that's a guaranteed higher spot. The only one I could see potentially moving in the next couple of years is Newcastle United.
Yeah.
That's the one, because I think if Spurs move, they're going to move for Areola. And Spurs have come in before, right? And, you know, it's been turned
I agree
down.
that I'm less worried about Spurs than I was at the beginning of the season.
I think that if there might be something there that if, especially with the Saudi links, and we know that the Saudi clubs have tried to pinch Marcus Silva in the past, that if Newcastle decided to move on from Eddie Howe because he wasn't taking them where they want to go fast enough, that might be one that comes in. But apart from that, I really am struggling to see where they go. I don't think he's a big enough name to go to United. And I think that, considering what happened with him in the last few years, he might just be like, nah, button that off. But there is also this kind of sense of he wants to succeed within the confines of the Premier League. Now, obviously, that changes if Real Madrid decide they're going to come have a sniff about, but I don't think that's going to happen, right?
Do you know that? Okay, weirdly, I was about where I was going to go. Is like not necessarily like next season or the season after, but with the aura that Marco Silva's got, if he did a few more successful years at Fulham, would it not be beyond the confines of possibility that one of those major two would sniff around Silva? He has that aura.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's beyond the stretch of possibility.
Real Madrid don't always go, as much as they always go for Galactico players, they don't always go for Galactico managers.
They don't, but I think that it's pretty nailed on that Xabi Alonso is going to be going there next. Like, it just feels like the really obvious succession plan that's been in place. Like, it's so weirdly widely accepted that it feels like it's been done.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of where I'm at with it. And that doesn't mean it is, right? Like, I'm not saying I have any inside knowledge in this. I'm just saying that it's just become kind of commonplace thought, especially since Liverpool decided not to move for Alonso and, and to go with Slot, who's done such a good job. So I think that there is probably an element of that, but I don't think it's beyond the confines of possibility, and that's fine.
I also, to be clear, meant like 5 years down the line, not this year.
That's also fine. Like, it's kind of one of those things, I think, where we're at with, obviously, if you continue to improve, at some point, someone is going to be like, look at the job he's done there over building a dynasty, right? Like, and that's maybe why I want to be here. But I do think that if you go backwards, Marcus Silva will be like, hang on, this is not what I was promised. And it's one of the things that the club have done really well in terms of managing expectations, I think, with Silva, but also with making sure that he feels like the ambition is there to go out and actually continue to improve the team and continue to work towards where he wants to be, which is challenging for trophies. Maybe not titles with his Fulham team, but challenging for trophies and potentially sniffing around the edges of Europe. So whilst Tim's point, I think, is fair, I do think there is an element of you have to keep building, and also treading water is okay. You finish 10th 3 seasons in a year, but if you stagnate, you go backwards in the Premier League because teams catch up. And I think that is a thing that we have to always be wary of.
Yeah. I think the thing is that for me, I don't think, I think Tim's right that if ultimately we get to the end of this season and there are fans criticising Fulham or that for the fact we did finish 10th, I think that would be unfair.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's okay to have, we can all have European hopes and dreams.
I think if you start as a club targeting 10th, you start finishing 13th.
Yeah, but also, without being funny, look at what the points difference is going to be between 10th and 8th at the end of the season. I'd be stunned if it's more than 3.
Yeah.
So the whole point is that if you're in 8th, you're in the European conversation, and if you're in 10th, you're not. But the difference could be a win or a loss on the final day of the season.
Yeah.
So, I think you have to target those things. If you finish 10th, we can't really complain about it. We can be frustrated, be like, we're so close. But I think you have to target as high as you can, right? And right now, that feels like something that Fulham have, not in the palm of their hand, that would be the wrong phrase, but something that's within the realms of possibility for Fulham to go and achieve, if we get a couple of big results over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, these next couple of weeks do feel kind of massive for that European conversation, as we shouldn't say. Matt W says, hello all. It seems that Fulham are holding back on offering players contracts or triggering the 1 year option. Adama Raul could leave at the end of the season. It's looking like Tete will be as his contract expires. Muniz, Wilson and Pereira have contracts ending in June 26, but no word from the club that they are negotiating. The last contract I remember being extended is Jedi's. Are players now letting contracts run to see what's offered elsewhere, or are the club dragging their heels?
A lot of these talks happen without the press knowing. Without being funny, and I know we just said we're better than them, but we're not Manchester United, where there is hundreds and thousands of rabid people trying to read every day about which contracts are going where, right? So that news does tend to stay quieter. There aren't as many leaks as smaller clubs. So I imagine that the club are working on these things. I would also imagine that Raul and Adama are going to be extended. That's within the club's capabilities, right? It's not necessarily to do with them deciding. So the club will look at that, towards the end of the season. I would be stunned if both of them don't get extended at this point. And I think that, with the rest of them, you look at that, and there is also an element of, and to kind of touch back on a previous point, if Fulham get to Europe, then the squad needs to be bigger, right? Suddenly the squad needs to be larger to be able to, Fulham to compete on multiple fronts. And so if that's the case, you have to kind of adapt your strategy in terms of, one, wages, but two, in terms of what you can offer players. And so it's more difficult to kind of do that if you don't know where you're going to end up next season, because there's no point us holding back on certain wages, etc., for players who we think are worth it, if we're not going to have to go out and spend on bringing new ones in to try and improve the structure of the club. So I would imagine it's just a little bit of, because we're caught in limbo, if you will, and limbo's a great place to be, it's not meant to be a negative, there's probably just some decisions to be made at some point, but especially with the players who don't, whose contracts run out next summer, then, you don't need to make a decision on exactly what that looks like until you have an idea of where you're going to be at that point.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do for the Thursday Club today. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for watching. If you're going to Brighton on Saturday, safe travels down to the South Coast. We'll be back on Monday reviewing everything that happens down there. If you haven't grabbed your live show ticket link to buy them is in the description. Jack Collins, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sammy. It was a pleasure. Nice to be back in studio.
Yeah, lovely. And we will be back with the Thursday Club this time next week. So have a wonderful weekend, whatever you're doing. You whites.
You whites.